Some of the sets that we weren't able to get to what we were asking from an offensive end, because there are times when the guys want to go ahead and do it how they want to do it, or they see something that how the defender is playing, they feel that this is the best way how to run a set.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. That was Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard on the last few minutes of the game on Saturday night. Didn't go Michigan's way. Thanks to mgoblue.com for the audio. We'll revisit that audio coming up in a minute or two. We'll hear the whole clip of what Juwan Howard had to say about the last few minutes or so of that game. One of the things that we're going to be talking about today, there's a few things to get to, and one of them has to do with what transpired on the ice. Michigan sweeping Michigan State in hockey with a dramatic overtime ender down in Detroit. Wolverines picked up a commitment recently out of the Peach State. We'll tell you about him coming up straight ahead as well. The game yesterday, the Super Bowl. From a Michigan perspective, I've got some thoughts on the Chiefs and Eagles. I was going to say, you probably watch the game, some of it, have some thoughts as well. I'll ask you a question about the Super Bowl and just what stood out to you. But we'll start with that basketball game. You heard Juwan Howard there at the outset. Michigan falling to Indiana, and might have ruined your Saturday. Hopefully it didn't ruin your Saturday. Michigan losing by a point. It was a really good game up to the end. 0 points in the final 5 minutes or so for Michigan. That's the shame of it all. Michigan at home. It was a great atmosphere. Michigan against Indiana. Wolverines had to have the game, and they were playing well, and it was Trace Jackson Davis against Hunter Dickinson. These guys going at it, the big men, the stars of the team. But you got to make plays down at the end of a game. It's like this in every sport. You can play well the entire game, but it's how you finish. You get down. If you're golfing, you do really well, but you miss a bunch of 3-foot putts. That's how you can lose a tournament when you're in a good position to win it. You miss your last 7 shots. You miss your last 9 out of 10. It says 19. That's not. It was they missed their last 9 out of 10 shots, including their last 7. That's how you lose a game at home by 1 point. And it wasn't like Indiana was making a bunch of plays. That's one of the things that's another punch in the gut, is that, the Hoosiers could have ended it a little sooner than that. But, they missed the front end of a 1-and-1. They dropped the ball out of bounds. They stepped on the sideline. I mean, they were doing all kinds of things too. And it's not gift wrap, but give Michigan a chance to make a play down at the end and win that game and feel pretty good about where they're headed. That would have been 4 games in a row that they would have won. They would have been showing up on all this bracketology that's going on. And instead, they are now looking at their odds get really long. They were already pretty long, but they're longer now, as you might expect. Michigan stays on that 14-win total. And they just have 6 games left in the regular season, and 4 of those games are on the road, including tomorrow up in Wisconsin. And then they have 2 home games, Michigan State and Wisconsin. They're going to need to win 4 of these games. We'll say it again. You always have a last chance in basketball. And the last chance, they could lose all of these games, and then they could head to Chicago, and they could win the Big Ten tournament, and then they could get into the NCAA tournament. And if they won 2 games, we'd be saying what a successful season that they had. But, you also take a look at it and say, well, what's likely? Is it likely that they can go 4-2 in these remaining 6 games? It's not likely. I'm not sure that they can go 3-3. Maybe they can, and they're sitting there with 17 wins. Could they then go to Chicago and rip off 3 wins in a row? Yeah, I mean they could. So it just puts them in a tougher spot than they were. And my own metric of just a percentage indicator of how I feel Michigan and where they sit right now. If you said, hey, what kind of chance that they have? I would say that they have not a very good chance, a 34% chance of getting into the tournament. If you think 34% is an all right chance, then you can feel like that. We'll take some of your feedback on this, how you're feeling about Michigan and their basketball team. Jason said it was a heartbreaking game. He said we need buckets to come off the bench and make buckets. He's talking about Joey Baker. Last 3 wins, Baker has given us 14, 8, and 11. Last 2 losses, 2 and 2. He is very important. Buckets is very important. That's laying it down right there, Jason, for all of us to see. Michigan wins. They're getting some scoring from Joey Baker. They lose. He's not adding much. You need him. Now, there was a point where we were talking about maybe he should be getting the start. Put him in the starting lineup. He was for that one game that Jet was out, and that was a tough one to get into the starting lineup, but it is a part of this. He is a key component for this team to have success. They have a spot in their starting lineup, their 5th spot, where whether it was going to be Baker, whether it was going to be Terrence Williams, who has started every game this year there for Michigan, and some people even suggesting Will Cheddar for a minute or for a time that he could go in there. At this point, you hear Juwan Howard talking about the players not listening or running their own plays. I'm going to play the audio back. It's not encouraging audio if you're a Michigan basketball fan. What I took out of this is Juwan saying, how could the players, why was there a 5-minute drought? Why did they miss 9 out of 10 shots? I don't know if that was the exact question, but it was about the late game execution. And Juwan says they were just doing whatever they wanted, basically is what he said. Michigan is doing whatever they want late in the game, not encouraging. Here's Juwan on mgoblue.com after the game.
Some of the sets that we weren't able to get to what we were asking from an offensive end, because there are times when the guys want to go ahead and do it how they want to do it, or they see something that how the defender is playing, they feel that this is the best way how to run a set, and overall you just got to trust. You also have to trust what is being asked, and then also apply. And that's where I think we got into trouble down the stretch, where we wasn't able to get to the offense that was called. But that's a learning process that our players have to get better with.
The players didn't listen to what was being drawn up and what was being asked of them. They did what they wanted. Not a good sign for this team in this point of the season. Sometimes that is referred to as hero ball, guys trying to do it themselves, but what's Juwan to do? It's not like he's got a lot of options on the bench. It's disappointing to hear that. Well, what were the plays that were called? Well, whatever they were, the players wanted to do what they wanted to do. And that sounds like a little bit of a mess to me. So that's it. We'll get to some, if anybody else has anything to say on the basketball team. Antoine does. He says Howard needs to actually coach. How about running some set plays and stop the Y pickup game? Do something other than kick it down to Dickerson and stand around. Well, Antoine, he said that the players just were doing what they wanted. So it's not a great soundbite for Juwan Howard, for the players, for Michigan basketball at this point. The Gladiator says that's a poor excuse from Juwan. I thought he would do better than that as a leader and a coach. There it is. So, well, that's where I'm at. I see people are talking about hockey, and they're talking about the football game last night. I want to hear from you on hockey. It was a dramatic weekend for Michigan. They sweep Michigan State, and I love this picture. This is from the Little Caesars Arena on Saturday night with just barely any time to spare. Luke Hughes beats the buzzer in overtime, and Michigan wins its sixth straight. Duel in the D, Iron D, if they don't call it the duel in the D anymore. It's a great picture because Hughes scores. He's celebrating. His teammates are looking to get a hold of him, and then you have the sprawled out goaltender from Michigan State on the ice. And you probably saw this highlight. It's one of the better ones that you will see. It was awesome weekend for the Maize and Blue on the ice. Lyle was pretty happy about that. He saw it. Mark says hockey wins. Any comment on the 0.6 second game-winning goal by Michigan versus Michigan State? Now a 6-year streak in the duel in Detroit. U of M now number 3 in the pairwise. Yeah, well, they did a fantastic job. And, this is the time now with the Super Bowl over that you look to the winter sports, basketball and hockey, and you start thinking about the tournament. And there's nothing better than the tournament in basketball, and there's nothing better than the Frozen Four college hockey tournament. I love them both. And Michigan playing in those, and annually they're playing in the hockey tournament. There was a time when they would never miss. It's just it's must see stuff. It is just like in basketball, a one game deal, one game elimination. There's no 2 or 3. It is when you get into the playoffs, the Big Ten playoffs, which those are all entertaining as well. But not when you get into the tournament, what makes it really awesome, as you know. Here's a question for everybody. What did you think of the Super Bowl? I'll look at last night's game from a Michigan perspective. I have a few things and a few thoughts on it. I see some people have already offered up some thoughts on the feedback. So let's get right to that. You can type yours in right now. Remember, you can be in tune with Michigan in 2023. Join the Maize and Blue Review. You want to know what's going on? Recruiting, football, basketball, coaching search, everything that's going on with Michigan. Go to michigan.rivals.com. That's how you get it done with the Maize and Blue Review. All right, before we get to that Super Bowl talk, Michigan did pick up a commitment recently. Mantrez Walker, a 6'1" linebacker out of Buford, Georgia. He becomes the second commitment for 2025. So that's not this upcoming recruiting class. That's 24. This is for 25. And Michigan lands their second commitment for the class of 25. Walker joins Chris Ewald Jr., who's a defensive back out of Florida. They don't have a ranking right now for Mantrez Walker, but when you look at the schools that were in the running for his services, say, this sounds like a 4-star to me. We'll see. Michigan, LSU, Florida, and Penn State was the list here for Mantrez Walker. So we got a little time to see how this one's going to play out, where he's going to be ranked in all of that sort of stuff. But, hey, there's a part of it you say, wow, that's a long time away. So when you're talking about 2025, it is, but it's also, he made his pledge. So we'll see. It's certainly one to track and see how that ends up playing out, right? So good job. Michigan being able to land Walker. Now, let's see. We do have some Super Bowl thoughts. And Andres kicks them off, talking about the officiating, and he said it's rigged, especially if it's played in Arizona. A nod to also the Fiesta Bowl where Michigan played TCU. like the refs rigged the game against TCU against Michigan, and the refs rigged the game against the Eagles against the Chiefs. Andres, you are not alone in your bitterness for the officials last night, and of course, on New Year's Eve in the Fiesta Bowl with how things went down there. It was a soft call, but you also there's a part of me, whether it was a penalty or not, and Bradbury after the game said, hey, he tugged Juju Smith-Schuster's jersey, so it was like he agreed with the call. And when you have a timing route like that, you can say, wow, the ball wasn't even close. When a guy, breaks you and breaks your stride and you can't get after the ball, you couldn't see it. I think when you look at it, you can say, yeah, technically you see that. Like you see it at different times. If you're watching a football and you're like, okay, they're going to call a ticky-tack one. You could call it a lot. There's a lot of, within the 3 yards, 5 yards of, hand fighting and even holding and all that. Sometimes it get called, sometimes it doesn't. There's a thought, which, I get. And as somebody that was just looking forward to maybe an overtime or 2 minutes and seeing a great play to win it, instead, it's the officials. That's a tough way to go. But it's really tough to be an official. Here's me trying to defend the officials. The game where they before against the Bengals where they pushed, Mahomes out of bounds, and it was clearly a late hit. People are like, well, no, you don't want to call that one. And we said, no, you want them to call it. You don't want them to call it, but you want the excitement at the end, so you want them to let it go. Those things are tough. But, the it's rigged part, what am I to do to sit here and tell people like, really? Most people focus on the officials when it's your team. You think you are getting screwed. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're, if it's your team, you think the officials are out to get you. And you really can't change people's mind, even if you tell them like, that's what everybody else across the country thinks when their team loses too. People don't want to hear it. They think that they're getting a call from upstairs or that they're getting paid, whatever, so what am I to do, and there are bad calls. Does it ruin a game for you? Will you stop watching sports? Is it something like I'm never going to gamble again? I don't know. Like all of those things. The thing you get so upset about it with Michigan and Ohio State back in 2016. The JT Barrett call, that you do what Michigan did the last 2 years and you take it out of the officials' hands. Now, the Eagles, who had a great defensive line, they had the most sacks in the NFL. They had the 3rd most sacks ever in NFL history. They didn't sack Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't stop him at all in the second half. And their special teams gave up the biggest play of the game to Tony, who ended up getting a punt return and damn near scored. Those are some of the things I would look at if I was a Philly fan. But, the call that it ends up really, giving KC the game, it's tough. So I understand, Andres, a lot of people are right with you in how they feel about things. Lyle is saying happy retirement for Chad Henne. Did he make that decision? Well, he goes out on top. Congratulations also to former Wolverine Frank Clark. I actually thought this game yesterday was over at the half. I had picked Kansas City to win this game, even though I thought Philadelphia had the better team. They certainly had, this excellent offensive line, this excellent defensive line. I already talked about how many times that they got to the quarterback. But all of those things, I still went with Kansas City because of Patrick Mahomes. And also Andy Reid, the Eagles staff, not much experience in the big game. Meanwhile, Reid with plenty of experience, even before he won it with Kansas City. And Andy Reid, a couple of those down at the goal line where he threw it easily to Kadarius Toney, wide open. I could have scored a touchdown there. To the other one that was basically Sky Moore, I could have scored a touchdown. with that play call, great design. And I know Michigan watches, the pros and what they're doing, because I saw last year Michigan doing some things that the Chiefs did in their goal line situations. Remember, the shuffle pass ahead to Blake Corum. Michigan did that more than once this year. That's right out of Andy Reid's playbook. You saw that. Of course, the Philly special, I hate to say it. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years ago against the Patriots, that's when the Philly special was adopted, and some teams used it after that. And obviously, Michigan tried to use it against TCU on that. I was going to say on that same field. It wasn't the exact same grass, although it was slip and sliding, similar, to New Year's Eve. But in that same stadium, Michigan trying the Philly special. And those guys will look at Andy Reid and the way that he's calling the offense, along with Bieniemy. They had some excellent plays down there in the red zone to get their guys wide open, and made it look so easy for Patrick Mahomes. They'll look at some of that. I also think that, speaking of the red zone, I know that Jim Harbaugh was watching that game last night, and you wonder at what point he texts Sharon Moore and says, "Rugby? A goal line package? Are we thinking about that?" Because the Eagles, in the short yardage situation with Jalen Hurts in the rugby scrum, is automatic. They've been doing it all year long. Ever since they've allowed the bush push, teams, some teams will go to it, but no team lines it up like the Eagles and gets everybody packed in there tight, and then, is able to execute it. Now, it's not as easy as just doing that. The Eagles have a Hall of Fame center in Kelsey. So having a great center is going to help you. Jalen Hurts, I remember when he was at Alabama as a freshman. They have a video. It's probably online. I didn't look it up, but I remember it. They had him squatting more than the offensive line as a freshman quarterback. And everybody was like, wow, this guy's just strong. Like, he had all these plates on both sides. And here he is, this quarterback. I don't think that there's a stronger quarterback in the history of the NFL than Jalen Hurts. They really didn't lift a whole lot of weights in the 21st century. This is kind of a new thing, or the 20th century, I should say. This is kind of a 21st century thing. Quarterbacks like lifting weights. So I don't even know. Steve Young did seem like, a pretty sturdy quarterback and a running QB. I don't know who else you'd think of, you'd say as a strong quarterback. The Vikings had a QB, and he was big, and his legs were giant, like Dante Culpepper. He seemed like he was pretty strong, but he was also big. Hurts is compact. I don't know if I don't think there's a stronger quarterback ever to play the position. So you've got that and a Hall of Fame center. Those are two things, so every team, goes up there. Tom Brady, if you say, well, who's the best at short yardage sneaks? It's Tom Brady, and he's not the strongest. I don't know if he would be in the top 100 of the strongest quarterbacks of all time. So it also takes, some craftiness, which Brady, was great, had a great rapport with his center, and the ability just to, stick his nose in there and then be able to get the ball over the goal line. But the combination of Hurts and Brady, the two best ever in the short yardage situation, you wonder if Michigan, now they had a great center last year, and now they've got you think Drake Nugent, the transfer from Stanford, maybe he's ready to do that. And you think, well, is McCarthy ready to do that in some of these short yardage situations? But if it wasn't going to be McCarthy, and you think, hey, how about a sturdy, strong quarterback that could come in short yardage situations for Michigan? I have a picture of Michigan sophomore quarterback number 10, Alex Orji. It looks like he's running a sprint over at the field house. And for those that are not looking at the picture, what you are looking at is Orji, who is he looks like Jalen Hurts with the legs on Alex Orji. I don't know what he squats, and I don't know about the rest of any of these numbers, but he's passing the look test when it comes down to a guy in a short yardage situation. If you wanted to go to the scrum, and I just think about the spring game when it was a short yardage situation, and they had him stopped short of the first down marker, and he pretty much sprung forward and carried a few defenders with him to the first down marker. You wonder if Michigan and Harbaugh and Sharon Moore, Orji? Question. I don't know. Maybe that's not the text that you would have said. Hey, Orji? Question mark. Short yardage situation. Or you have to wait. It's funny sometimes. Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, is up, grabbing some snacks during the Super Bowl. He's got his phone down, and his wife's sitting there. If the text comes in from Harbaugh, she's not really watching. Jalen Hurts just go in, from the half-yard line, and she looks down, and she just sees Orji? Question mark. Sharon comes back with his chips. Hey, what's the problem? Why am I getting this? Why am I getting this evil eye? You tell me. Alex Orji. I got a close-up of Orji because he looks pretty big, but I'm only blew the picture up. He looks like, in just physically, that he's going to be hard to stop in a scrum type situation like Jalen Hurts was in last night, where he scored. Hurts scored 3 touchdowns. How about Orji in the short yardage situation like Jalen Hurts, like the scrum situation, the Bush push, the Orji shove, whatever. Get in behind him, push him in, a la the Eagles. Some of the thoughts that I was thinking about as I was watching that game last night. All right, so there it is. When it comes down to the Super Bowl, some of the things that I was thinking about. Let's see what Mark. They didn't even drop the puck to run out the clock. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I mean, could you really drop it? Boom! I thought they had to just to do it, but I didn't know that. I like it. Lyle was definitely impressed on the improved defense this year, especially Edwards. I don't know really where that's coming from. Maybe you were answering another question. Matt says still animosity between Michigan and Michigan State. It rolled over into hockey. Yeah, so there was a lot of penalties on Friday night in Michigan's victory up in East Lansing. Yeah, I got news for you. There's always, the first ever Michigan State hockey game I watched, I don't know, it was like the late 80s or something, and there was a bench clearing brawl and all this and they still talk about that particular Donnybrook all these years later. But is it spilled over from what's going on with football into hockey? And Tom Izzo threw himself into that situation, so it's with basketball as well. Yeah, I mean, those things are going to be top of mind for Michigan State. Michigan State, there's no love loss when it comes down to Michigan and Michigan State. And now you add the the latest chapter of the tunnel and everything that is definitely still out there for sure, and that's not going away anytime. It's like tomorrow, the Michigan-Wisconsin revisit from last year. Tomorrow, Valentine's Day, the slap swing by Howard. That is going to be top news tomorrow. When then the next game, Michigan plays Michigan State at home. the Chrysler Center crowd is not going to be so welcoming. They're never welcoming of MSU, but they'll be out to get them, so to speak, the next time MSU's in. So, yeah, there's still animosity. There's always animosity, and there is still animosity. Trevor has some animosity, and it's for Juwan Howard, who says he needs to be fired immediately. If you don't know how to draw up a play for Hunter down low, you deserve to get fired ASAP. It made me sick. Yeah, I get that feeling. I understand you're not the only one that suggested that. I don't think there's any chance unless something like, happened last year in Wisconsin happens down the stretch here. I think Howard should remain the head coach, will remain the head coach. And yeah, watching what Michigan did with Hunter Dickinson the two previous games, popping him out, moving him around, and they still, this game, just seemed to like throw it down to him in the left block. What was going on? Indiana was fronting it. They were defending it. They were like double teaming him even before, Michigan threw it down there to him. And the thing was, is Michigan had nothing to counter that. Like their idea was, okay, let's get the ball to Hunter, go. And then, they're fronting him. And then it was like, whoa, what are we going to do now? I didn't know. It was a little hot potato situation. Nobody knew what to do. And so the shot clock's running down. There was some panic. And then they were tentative when they couldn't get it to Dickinson. And you could tell the confidence wasn't there. And you had to have a forced shot by Kobe Buffkin. Wasn't all that bad of a shot, but one that you could get anytime, not all that good. Doug McDaniel tried one that could have been a goal 10, pretty close, didn't get called. You had Jet at the end. So one thing, like for a team, it's nice to be able to share the ball and have anybody, but you want to have one person with the game tied, with 8 seconds to go. You can say, this is who we want to get the ball to. It's like Hoosiers. When they sit down, they've got Jimmy. And the one time, Gene Hackman was like, we're going to go away from Jimmy now. We're going to get over there. And what did Jimmy do there? The whole team was deflated. Everybody's like, oh. And then Jimmy looked up and said, I'll make it. And then they're like, all right, run it over to Jimmy. And he hit it. Michigan doesn't have that. And if Jimmy is Hunter, you can't just throw the ball into Hunter and, you've got to find a way to get him the ball. And the one time they did, Hunter didn't do anything. He kicked it back out. And then after that, it was Kobe time. Then it was Doug McDaniel time. Then it was Jet Howard time. It was bad, Trevor. Gladiator did not like the interference call that played into the KC win and spoiled an otherwise good Super Bowl game. Yep, I hear what you're saying. A lot of people agree with you on that. I thought it was a soft call. I would not have, but I'm not going to be overly critical of the refs, either that one or the one that they threw, just because we were really enjoying the game. And then they make a call that they see that they're in position for. They think it's, did you want them swallow the whistle because we want to make it an exciting game? Then it would be criticized the other way. So, you can't win if you're there for the fans. But I'm not sitting around. My job of defending the officials and everything else, it doesn't happen. I think that it evens out. Michigan was a recipient of an even more blatant not a call that they were able to win a championship in a title game. I'm reminded all the time about it because I have a friend who is a Seton Hall basketball fan. And every time I see him, which is not all that often, but he always says, Ramil was not fouled. And, I was like, okay, what I remember is it was, kind of a touch foul at the end. I looked it up today, and I'm going to play this for you. This goes back to 1989, the NCAA championship game, Michigan and Seton Hall. I have the video up on the screen. Michigan is down 1 point with 10 seconds to go. What is going to happen is Ramil Robinson dribbles the ball up, and he is going to get fouled. Seton Hall is going to be called for a foul, and it is one of the softest calls that you will ever see. All of you guys that hated the foul last night on Bradbury, wait till you see this one. Now, Ramil throws the ball over to Mark Hughes. You know who's about 12 feet away. Mark Hughes is going to have a 12-footer for the national championship. Maybe he makes it. Glenn Rice, who had worked his way down to the left side of the basket, maybe would have been there, along with Sean Higgins, who tipped one into the Final Four to get Michigan into the championship game. Maybe one of those two guys would have tipped it in for the win. And that's what we would have wanted to see. Instead, you had the official call a phantom foul on Seton Hall, which set up Ramil Robinson, who had to then make 2 free throws, down 1. I'm going to run it so everybody can see this. Just take a look at Ramil Robinson here. Whoa, there was the foul call. Mark Hughes was even closer. He might have been, 8 feet away. But we just got to rewind it. They don't have the replay here. Steve Fisher's like, yeah, I'm sure he was. Oh, no. I went to another screen. I'm going to have to go back there. Here it is. Now, look at the foul call. Right there. Nothing was there. So the point here is that Michigan benefited and won a national championship because of a total phantom call. It would have been better to see if Mark Hughes would have been able to knock down that jumper. It would have been better to see if Higgins. Boom! Ramil, who was not a very good free throw shooter, like under 60%. What was he? 60%? 55%? So he drains the first to tie the game. And Mike Griffin. And so one more to put Michigan up. And, back in the day, like now touch fouls get called a lot more in basketball. Back in 1989, you pretty much had to clothesline somebody to get a call. And it didn't happen. I just want to see Ramil hit this one to win it. Boom. There it is. 3 seconds to go. PJ Carlissimo. How close of a shot did they get here with 3 seconds? Does Michigan have somebody on the ball? They should. They should have somebody. Steve Fisher maybe call the timeout. Okay, we just wanted to say, okay, now they're back. And they do have somebody on the ball. That's good. Baseball pass into the front court. Oh, they got a pretty good look at it. Seton Hall did. And Michigan wins it. There it is. The interim head coach, PJ Carlissimo from the Pirates, Seton Hall. And there it is. Michigan wins the national championship. All right. I did that just because you think, wow, that's not the way you want title games to go. I know. You don't want them to go that way. And it happens. Jason liked the Chris Stapleton national anthem. I did too. I thought it was very good. But Jason says he thinks Whitney Houston's is the best ever I've seen. But Chris was a very, very close second. Yeah, Whitney Houston, because, of when it happened, 1991. Bills, Giants, and the United States had just got involved and had some, was it Kuwait, Iraq, Kuwait, I think. And had just, sent the planes in there. So everybody's patriotism was at an all-time high. And then Houston came out there and belted it out. She did a great job. I don't know if you can I don't know if we have quite the patriotism that we did back in 91. For a couple months after 9/11, there was a lot of that. Andre saying if Michigan can retain Walker and Ewald, that would be huge. Getting busy in the South. Yeah, that's a long time to go, but, they got him right now. So we'll see. The coach is talking about Bob Knight. He's going back. He says when the general used to coach, if you didn't run the set right or pass the ball, regardless, if you hit the shot, he was pulling you out. Yeah. That's true from the general. Mark says the transition from Berenson was excellent. He's talking about the hockey team. He's also mentioning the women's gymnastics getting a natty and delivering top performance of the season to qualify for them to win. Best score in the final. Best against the best. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people and a lot of Michigan fans, like Michigan in Olympic sports, and they used to call it the Sears. Did they call it the Sears Cup? I don't know. They just call it the Cup now for all sports. No, Michigan is trying to get there. It's usually Michigan and Stanford, right? Or what's going on there? That's big for a lot of Michigan fans. Trevor talking about the field being a joke. Here's Mark going back to the TCU game. TCU could have been wearing green, as awful as Michigan played when it really mattered. The shocker was there was still a chance to win, even with all the disasters. Lyle said super suspicious that let him play all night. Yeah, well, I'd say, I guess, anything that happens with the officials or a call or a non-call, they're going to get skewered. So that's part of it. The championship Sunday, the lead was the officials across the country. They're on the take. They screwed it. They screwed the Bengals. Chiefs got all the calls. It was, it was a joke. Super Bowl, the lead, and you could say it's Mahomes, but a lot of people like you, Lyle, going to the call, it was 35-35, and it was set up. That's where we're at. And what do you want me to say? That, there needs to be an investigation. I think the NFL, Roger Goodell, he doesn't care about it. Like, if they could make these officials, nobody likes the all-star teams of officials. I haven't heard one person that they put, the guys that graded out the best at all the different positions, they put them all together and then put them out there. I haven't heard anybody say, it's a really good way that the NFL does things. You know what I always hear? That's not the way to do it. You got to work so you get the checks and balances, and the teams that have been there, and they get graded and they work together as a team. That's what I hear. But that's not the way the NFL does it with their grading system. Maybe they'll change that. They should change that. They have this, they talked about the Sky referee, Skybox, and people are like, no, that's just going to make it more cloak and dagger, where it's going to be, well, they have the expedited call now, where they actually have somebody up in the booth and they say, no, that was not the right call. And then they change it. Maybe they should have had somebody up there doing that. But then Matt says he doesn't get why the real turf was so slippery. Well, what they do is that they grow this grass, they pull it out so it can be in the sun the whole time, and they're watering it and they're taking care of it. But then they cut it and they bring it to the Super Bowl, and it's just for 2 weeks, and it doesn't allow the roots to grow into the ground. It's only like this, and it's going to cause the sod to shift. They don't allow enough time. Look, I'm no greenskeeper or horticulturist or anything else, but they've been preparing this field for so long, and then they cut it, and then they bring it in 2 weeks later, and then they just slide it in there, and there's not the necessary amount of time to be able to, take root. And I don't know the plate that they have to slide it in there. Maybe they think, I don't know how thick it is, but maybe they thought, oh, well, I don't know how deep the roots go for grass, so it wouldn't do that. That's why. And, those guys, it happens all the time. You would think that with the technology, after you see one, like Patrick Mahomes rips up his knee there, and what are we saying? Oh, man, tough break? No, we're saying, man, the NFL screwed it up and had their star player wreck his knee on that. They're lucky nothing like that happened, but it was terrible. The Gladiator says Mahomes was throwing the ball away under pressure. It was an uncatchable ball. That's the way it may have looked to you, Gladiator, but when a player is being tugged in their jersey, Juju Smith-Schuster may have been able to catch that ball. I know you may not think that, but that's the way it looks. It looks like you can't do it when you get pulled off when you're getting ready to sprint and go after the ball. The only thing greasier than that field is the Fiesta and Super Bowl refs' pockets. Jason, you cannot blame 1 second call on a 60-minute game. That's what we're doing. Matt said it was an uncatchable ball. Yeah, it might have been catchable. I think I don't agree with that. I mean, like I said, I thought it was a soft call. I don't like games to be ended that way. I know I would like to see it get down to 2 minutes and somebody make a catch, make a run, make a big play, not where it's the officials, but you do have officials involved in the game. And if they see something, and by the, it was a call, what you wanted to happen is that, well, they hadn't really called it that game. They were letting them play, and then they didn't, which makes people mad. I get that part. I would like to see a play get made myself. But that's tough. That's tough on the officials, when to swallow your whistle, when to make a call, when not to make a call, all of that. So, I understand that they're going to get criticized, and I'm not even defending them. Mark says they overseeded the Bermuda grass with rye to fill it out. Mark, talking about hockey, has a penalty for receiving soccer b-ball. Now the NFL flops common when touched. I think about hockey, and it was Michigan hockey. One of the worst calls in hockey is when the ref blows the whistle when he loses sight of the puck, when it's like in the crease. And it happens in big games a lot. Just blow the whistle. The problem is, and it's for safety, like if they don't see the puck, then the idea is that, they blow the whistle for the safety of the players who are crashing the net and everything. There was, I think it was either a Frozen 4 game or it could have been a championship game. I think it was a championship game against Minnesota a few years ago. Michigan had shot the puck. It was going 5-hole through the goaltender. 5-hole through his pads, right between his pads, right between the wickets. The puck got it wasn't like a slap shot where it's flying in through there. And the Michigan player kind of got a piece of it. And it was slow slider through the 5-hole. And the whistle gets blown and the referee says he loses sight of the puck. You go back to the replay and you see the puck going in and you're listening, and then you see it go between the goaltender's legs. And then half second later, you hear the whistle blow, and then you see the puck. It's already across the goal line, and you see it going into the back of the net. Now, they should have looked at that and should have said, look, it didn't matter if the whistle was blowing, because as it was blowing, it was already underneath the goaltender, and as soon as the whistle is expired, you see it in the back of the net. And I believe Michigan would have won the national championship there. So Michigan got screwed on losing sight of the puck. That's why they called it holding, because catchability doesn't matter. There you go, Andres. Andres pulling out the officiating book. Good point. So there was none of this. The sideline catch to Smith that was overturned would have resulted in a touchdown instead of them kicking a field goal. You know, I thought that was a catch myself. I like that. I mean, so it was such a. There's a few that they need to look at, and I know that I didn't. He makes a great catch, and then he's got it secured. And then when he goes to the ground, it does hit the ground, but he seemed like he had it for so long, and had like 2-3 feet in, and then he didn't survive the ground. I thought that should have been a catch. At first, I didn't think the Goddard one was a catch, but then when they did slow it down and you could see the feet, it's like, okay, there it is. Jamar Chase had one against Buffalo. It was a great catch, it seemed like, and then they overturned that one. I think that they need to err on the side of making it a catch. When you have these Devontae Smith catches, when the Jamar Chase catches, it gets down there, and man, you're starting to talk about the ball just moving, and then come on. Let's call those a touchdown. Let's not grind those out too much. Philly quit running. They needed to pitch to the outside. Well, Philly's defense, which had been good all year long, disappeared in the second half. Credit goes to Kansas City's offensive line and to Patrick Mahomes. Jason says, if you are the best team, do not leave the game in the hands of the officials. Same as fighting. Finish your opponent. Do not leave it to the judges. I hear that. Plainly a near ideal career. Best job in sports. Who? Oh, Henny. Oh, C. Henny. I was like, who's Chenny? Sometimes I see things. Chad Henne had nearly the ideal career, best job in sports. Yeah, being a clipboard Jesus that Henne was is nice. I mean, you go through all the practices and everything else, but you never play, barely. I mean, Henne, the 2 Super Bowls, ironically, they needed him. They needed him 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. They won 2 and 4, so, he had to come in and complete the big third down in the divisional round a few years ago. And then this year they needed him on a long drive. And so, he was able to come in there. Ideal that he doesn't have to go through the abuse and still gets paid, I think is what you're saying. Ideal. For me, the ideal career is actually being the star, and being out there and being able to play. But I get what you're saying. It's not bad. Hurts outplayed the media darling Mahomes minus the fumble. Hurts played a great game. Hurts is an outstanding football player. Here's the problem is that while it is quarterbacks and, Hurts, if he continues to play and wins the Super Bowl and puts up record after record, he will become what you call a media darling because Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now. So when you're the undisputed best player in the league and you have been for 5 years, yes, a lot of people are going to like you and you are going to call him, like you are, a media darling. So what you also need in a team game is Hurts needed his special teams to get Kadarius Toney on the ground and not allow him to have that huge punt return. He could have helped if his punter didn't kick such a line drive that was so returnable to Kadarius Toney. Also, his vaunted defense, which is one of the greatest sack machines ever, couldn't get a hand on the media darling. That had nothing to do with the media. And I'll tell you about the media darling in Patrick Mahomes. Last year, they let the cheetah go to Miami. And I thought that was a mistake. If you look at this year, Tennessee, you look at the 2 number 1 seeds last year. Tennessee. They traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles, and then they drafted some dude out of Arkansas, Treylon Burks. Tennessee didn't make the playoffs this year, and Burks didn't do much. The number one seed in the NFC last year was the Green Bay Packers. They didn't make the playoffs. They traded away, or they let walk. They didn't pay him his money. Devontae Adams, one of the great wide receivers in the game. And they drafted in the second round Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, who did fine in the last 8 games, but the Green Bay Packers didn't make the playoffs, let alone be the number one seed. Mahomes loses Tyreek Hill, leads the NFL in passing yards, touchdowns. He was the MVP, and he led Kansas City to the number one seed after he lost to Cheetah. That's how you become the media darling, Gladiator. You're the best player in the game. Patrick Mahomes now. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback ever, followed by Joe Montana, my list, followed by John Elway, followed by Peyton Manning. I would have number 5 on that list, Patrick Mahomes, now with 2 Super Bowls. So he's one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time. So the media darling part is deserved. He's one of the great players of all time. He keeps posting numbers like this. He'll move in front of Peyton Manning. He'll move in front of John Elway on my list. If he gets to 4 or 5 Super Bowls, he's only got 2. Well, then, I can move him in front of Joe Montana, which I never thought I would do. If he gets close to 7, goes to 10, and he's got a long way to go to get to Tom Brady. Media darling. Hurts is awesome. But as much as we, take a look at the quarterbacks, you got to do some other things. OT, don't forget to congratulate Mike Dana, who transferred to Michigan. Great job, OT. I'm sorry for not putting him on the list there and not congratulating Mike Dana, the defensive end. Thanks for having my back. Andres did not like it was a lack of objectivity. Well, we could sit here and do this all day. The Eagles took the high road after the game. All right. The coach says he doesn't know why Michigan doesn't use Orji in the goal line package. He's like having another running back just sitting there on the bench. I'm telling you, Harbaugh was watching that last night. I'm just sending that group chat out. Orji? Question mark? Guys were like sliding their phones, turning them over. Yeah. No, you're talking about who took the money. You're talking about a referee? Using Orji on the goal line is too innovative? I don't know, man. I think that we might see it. I think when you have a great quarterback, you don't like to take him off the field, and you got a great one. Look at what JJ was able to do down in the red zone against Ohio State, for instance, this year. But do I think that they could have an Orji package? I think they have an Orji package. How much of an Orji package? When do you go to the Orji package? Every time you're down there, you got to have some big quads. It'd be like Dak Prescott at Mississippi State if Michigan didn't start JJ. Yeah. All right. Here we are. When you start talking about Orji, this is it. Did he allow the push play or shove play in college? Yes. Yes, they do. Mm-mm-mm. All right. I could, like we have been doing, been sitting here all day talking about orgy packages, and I got a little bit behind. OT says everybody but Dennis said it was a bad call. I said it was a soft call. I didn't really like the call, but I'm not going to kill the officials on it. And we're going to kill the officials on calling a penalty. It's the same thing as last week. You know how many people are like, yeah, that was a penalty, but not in that situation. So not only do you want the officials to make the correct call, you want them when it gets down to the end of the game not to make the right call because you want to let the players decide it. That's a tough standard. Just know that. I don't take up for the officials because I don't think that the NCAA and I don't think Roger Goodell and the NFL that they put enough money into it to try to eliminate that doubt, making these guys full time and working all year long on trying to do better and clean it up with the officials. I think Goodell takes the stance of, people get over it. No, they're human. They're going to be bad calls, which is true. So I like when you have money on it and it's your team, you just think these guys are the devil. Maybe they should put more former players in those situations, put the whistles in their mouths. And then they should pay them full wages and work on their technique all year long. They do that, and then they can at least say, look, we went out there and we tried to do everything that we can. We watch tape. We take it to the field. We work on situational stuff. We try to have a consistent team of officials and how they are communicating and calling a game. They don't do all those things, and a situation like this comes up, and they just have to take the abuse. I'm not taking up for them. But I'm also not just screaming like that they're on the take and this is a joke and it's that's, well, that's it. I have other people do. It's okay. This says it was the same field that Michigan played on. I don't think that's the case, Kent. I was reading about it. They said that they had just brought that field in 2 weeks ago. So I think Michigan did play on a similar type situation where they brought a grass field in. I don't know if it was 2 weeks before the Fiesta Bowl and then slid it in there. And then, but this was not the same grass. And it would have made sense actually if it would have been the same grass. Maybe they would have allowed it to take root from New Year's, and maybe it would have been a better field. But I don't know what goes involved in that. But I don't remember Michigan sliding all over the place. But I saw a lot of people online saying, "Oh yeah, it was Michigan had the same kind of problems, slipping all over the place." Shane. Quarterback sneaking to 1 yard line is not only unstoppable, but too easy for Michigan to call. They'd rather try other plays on the one. Hey, you don't like giving it to a linebacker? I don't know. That's unnecessary. It happened. I'm not going back to New Year's Eve. I don't know if that's ever going to be a good spot to talk about it because you go back there and we keep saying the same stuff. I keep saying the same stuff. Oh boy. Yeah, Joe Milton was the worst short yardage quarterback that I've ever seen. You're right. I don't think Joe as much as Joe Milton looked like this perfectly constructed quarterback, 6'5", 250, chiseled out of granite. He couldn't pick up a yard if his life depended on it. And at Michigan, it did. No, yeah. I think it could be toughness, situation, something like that. Don't forget Frank Clark. I didn't forget Frank Clark. I put Clark and Henny's name up on the board, and I congratulated both of them, but I did not do so with Dana. So I appreciate everybody for getting my back there. All right. So, yeah, I agree. Everything's stoppable, but hard requires good play to keep under a yard. Yeah. All right. I appreciate the conversation today. Is it a conversation? If I'm just, I appreciate the feedback and communicating with all of you, talking about Michigan. Tomorrow, we'll do it again with a Valentine's Day slant. Michigan prepares to take on Wisconsin in basketball. Till then, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.